Well, today you join me standing in the farm pond at Ocklinch Farm, looking at the Ocklinch farmhouse. Well, at least I would have been a couple of 100 years ago. But that's about all that's left of the farm now. And today I'm going in search of the Burne, or the Bourne stream, which gives its name to the town of Eastbourne. A little bit more is explained later. I can't take you exactly where the source is in Mottcombe Gardens because we're not allowed in. But I can show you this is the pond that's left, all that's left of the Ocklinch Farm pond. And there is the source of the Bourne stream from which Eastbourne gets its name. And I want to draw your attention to the statue of Neptune here. And that stood in the mill pond further downstream, which I'll talk more about later on, and was moved from here when public access to the old pond down there was removed and it was all built over and what have you. And I'm sorry, that's the closest I can take you now. The source of the River Bourne. So this is where it all began. Well, the modern day settlement as we know it, because obviously there have been Iron Age settlements and that on the downs for many years before that. You can see that nice view across the bowling green to the parish church in OldTown, St Mary's. This is the historical bit of Eastbourne that people tend not to come round to. There's a mixture of ancient and modern here in Mottcombe Road in terms of the architecture, and although I'm very sad to see that any blue plaque that should have been there has been removed. That, number 7, as I understand it, was Tommy Cooper's house here. He mainly lived in Chiswick, but he had his little retreat. Another one of those sad tales, unfortunately, that behind the public face of a man who even now makes me laugh. He's only got to appear on the screen. A life of tragedy, but I won't go into that out of respect for his family. I'm actually walking through the middle of the old farm pond now. Through Lawrence Avenue. '20s, 1930s kind of style. But there is one thing about lockdown. You can walk through the middle of the road. Now, I'll mention the Star Brewery later on. And we're coming up now to where the Star Brewery was. As you can see, modern houses that don't really fit the style of the original buildings here. Those down that little side road do. And then we come to one of the oldest buildings here. This is the Lamb Inn, parts of which date back to 1180. And it's said that there are cellars underneath the Lamb Inn that lead under the churchyard here and into the old parsonage barn. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a walk through the churchyard, which is looking a little bit unkempt at the moment. But anyway, if you want a time check, it's about 6:05 on a Sunday morning. Normally I think the priest would be up and about. Not today. And here is the old parsonage barn, where those cellars are supposed to be ending up. There, the old parsonage barn. You very often find in this part of the country a connection between the church and smuggling. I think what you have to remember is that the vicars were not necessarily religious in those days. They were often second or third sons of the nobility who didn't go into the military. So they became vicars and could have quite a comfortable life. I think that building is flats now. But this is the 12th century Church of St Mary. A more modern addition, giving a covered walkway to this lovely, the pilgrims. Pilgrim's house. But this was the beginning of the South Downs Way, and I guess a lot of pilgrims going along the coast, coming down from Canterbury, heading towards Chichester, might well have been grateful of the chance to stay for the night in this building. Anyway, carry on with our walk through. I can't unfortunately look at anything much closer because of the lockdown, but I have this nice little walled garden this side. This is rather nice. Complete with the Lord of the Manor there, look. Thinking to himself, what's he doing up at this time of the morning? Would that be the original fat cat, do you think? One thing about a slightly overcast morning, as we walk through this lovely avenue of trees here, is that it means I can see the LED screen clearer. I'm guessing in here, where there are these little flowers, by the looks of it, I'd say this is where ashes have been interned over the years. Anyway, walk up here past another one of these old flint and brick buildings, and you'll notice that ironwork S on the wall there. You'll find these in a lot of old Sussex buildings. They are there because Sussex people used to be very, very religious and superstitious, and you put one of those on your house to ward off evil spirits. Now we come to the main road out of Eastbourne towards Brighton. And there's the Edgemont Baptist, I think it's a Baptist chapel, up there dating back to 1892, and up on the top there is more 1930s. It's a pub called Tally Ho, a restaurant and that now. Actually got nothing to do with horse riding, as the name might suggest. But Tally Ho was a collier, and it went down off the coast of Eastbourne with its cargo of coal. The old buildings in Eastbourne here were knocked down in the late 60s. And early 70s. There's been a lot of these, what I call sporty hatchbacks about this morning, driven by young men. They've probably been out on the tiles all night, like the best cats in the world. This was a very narrow road, very narrow in its time. Again, explain more about that later, but here is the 12th century Church of St Mary in Greensand. Stands on the site of an earlier Saxon church, though very little of that remains, leading down to the Lamb Inn on the corner. Very pleasant retirement homes here on the right now. I'm finding it very hard to remember the road as it was before they rebuilt. I seem to remember these walls were higher because they built the level of the road up. And I think, yes, they took away a lot of the pavement from the other side basically moved the whole road this way, because you can see as we walk by in a moment, you'll be able to see when I walk the other side the railings where the original road would have come round the corner, and you see how they flattened the curve off. And at this point we go to the studio. Just bringing you this very quickly from the studio. Several photographs of the OldTown area that I need to back up what you'll see on video. Here you're looking at the street map of Eastbourne, and you'll see I've done a big thick felt pen line where the original course of the Bourne stream would have gone, starting from the big blob at the top, which is in Watcombe Gardens. You'll see that flowed down through the farmyard and then down of course to the other next little blob, which was the little, as you could call it, mill pond area, which was quite pretty. You'll see a photograph of that later on, where actually people were able to go and walk, fish and enjoy themselves. That was behind what is now Henry's, what was the Holy Rosary Convent School. The mill itself stood up near more where Michel Grove is, and on Upperton Road. Hard to believe there was a mill there and a pond, looking at all the building that's been there now, and of course the Bourne stream has virtually disappeared into pipework, which it then did anyway down at the junction of the Goss and Upperton Road. You'll see it ran down behind and underneath Southfield Road to the next big blob, which was a large pond that they had until early in the 20th century down on the ground where the Central Library now stands, funnily enough. It then wound its way along what is now Ashford Road, through Tideswell Road and down into Seaside, probably coming out somewhere near where the Marine stands now, or between the Marine and the Crown, where it would empty out into marsh because it wasn't strong enough to find a way through the silted up beach and out into the sea by itself. It had to be helped out by a little drainage culvert. Now you see from the white line that the black pen line that I've put in there, you'll see it is in pipework under Ashford Road, along the back of Cavendish Avenue until up behind Cortlands Road, where it surfaces again and runs as part of the drainage ditches on the Horsley levels underneath Lockbridge Drove, and along to an end-on junction where it drains out into Prince's Park in the sea, in a video which we shall see later on. And here's Watcombe Gardens. This is where the Bourne stream rises, one of those freshwater springs that are such a part of chalk downland. And this really is where current day Eastbourne began, in a settlement known as Burne, and then Bourne, and then Eastbourne to distinguish it from a settlement in West Sussex by the name of Westbourne. And here is the Old Star Brewery. I'm told the ales were very good, but I never got the chance to drink any. Unfortunately, I arrived in Eastbourne too late. But this was one of the sights that greeted me when I first arrived here. Very sad, run down, neglected, ready for redevelopment. It had a little pub attached to it on the other side called the Star Shades. And here it is. That would have been a lovely little pub to be refurbished and redevelopment. And well, such a shame that it had to go. There is still a pub there, which you'll see later on, called the Star Inn. Not the same, didn't look as nice. This would have been lovely. They could have redeveloped it and put a little terrace or something outside, gardens where people could come and enjoy themselves, but people wanted money more. This, I'm given to understand, is the old Ocklinge Mill. I somehow have my doubts. It looks almost too rural, even for 1800 and something. But it would mean Upperton Road is behind us and the Goss is down the hill on the other side. Although the downs do look the right sort of shape for that background. And this is a drawing of the mill pond
as it would have been. Somebody there sitting, fishing, and probably would have been a very nice tranquil spot for people to go and take a nice little walk. All gone now, of course. So then we move on to a few views of Eastbourne as it is now. Before the redevelopment, we had a cinema in OldTown. The OldTown Cinema. That must have been a grand place in its time. There were two little side roads that went down at the time, Star Road and Baker's Road, and I think that was Star Road leading down to the Star Shades Inn. When I arrived in Eastbourne, it had turned into this view coming up. And that's how it stayed until probably the mid-70s, because I can remember standing at the bus stop behind that Triumph Herald there, and on wet nights sheltering in the old shop doorway, waiting to go home from having a night at either the Crown Folk Club or the Lamb Folk Club. But as I say, that was certainly how things were until getting on for the mid to late 70s. Rather an upsetting view. Right at the top end of Church Street, we had this, which in my day was St Mary's Hospital, then converted into flats, Leatherenden Place, I think they call it now. And before being St Mary's Hospital, this was the cavalry barracks that was built to house the troops that came to man the Martello Towers around about the late 18th, early 19th century. And moving further on into the 19th century, this is how the High Street used to look. And yes, this is the High Street. It still is the High Street because this was the original town of Eastbourne before development moved round to the railway station area after the coming of the iron rails. Very cramped and crowded, as you'll see, but very busy. Moving on to the early years of this century, difficult to date it, probably late 20s maybe. You'll see how narrow the road is coming down the hill past the church and on that sharp turn into the High Street. Caused problems for motor vehicles later on, and especially buses, because two buses couldn't get past each other there. We had a rule that when you came down the hill, and you'll see here very clearly what I mean by the narrow width of the road. This has got to be late 60s because the chimney of the Star Brewery is still there behind the Lamb, and also you can see the tops of the buildings that were behind the Lamb Inn at the time. This all went very well until 1965, when one day a corporation bus coming down the hill saw nothing coming up, carried on as he was perfectly entitled to do, and then the southbound bus, which suddenly appeared out of nowhere, decided he wasn't going to stop, and as he went round the tight corner, clipped the side of the corporation bus, which sent the bus into the side of the Lamb Inn. And, that's another story, but a little piece of history for you.
Back live again now, and you can see where the line of this wall was the original line of the road as it came round quite a sharp corner, and they've moved it over there and been knocked down some of the buildings over that side. But we're here beside the Lamb Inn again. I just want to show you this Celtic cross that's here. Apparently it arrived, was given by Cornwall, but I don't know much of the history about it. It just appeared here. Somewhat out of place, I think, but this was a lovely place. It was a favourite watering hole of mine back in the 70s. when I was at college and after I'd started on the buses. This was also where we, after the Merry England Folk Club closed, we had a folk club here, of which I was proud to be a member and singer. We also used to do discos. Now you imagine humping all your disco equipment right up there. Not very pleasant. Now, up those steps over there, that leads to the Manor Gardens and the old Manor House in there, which used to be the Town Art Gallery. All these now closed off. And you remember I showed you in the studio shots the line of shops with the cinema behind it. Welcome to what is now Waitrose. When that was built around about 1980, it was a Safeway supermarket. Times change. There's another pub that I have had the occasional drinking, not many, Prince Albert, typical mock Tudor style pub, probably dating from around about the 20s or 30s ago. And if we look up at this sign here, it's telling us that hopefully in just under an hour the first bus from Brighton will arrive. Now, the Bourne stream is currently to the left of us, underground. Put into pipe work when they built Moatbrook Road here. You can see these flint walls, remnants of the older houses that used to be here, and things that you forget, things that you don't notice in your ordinary daily life, but there is a rather magnificent older building there. And you know, all these years I've been here, I've never really taken that much notice of it. But look at that old doorway. That's got to be 400 or 500 years old at least, wouldn't you think? Probably made of oak. And then you follow these mock Tudor efforts. This is as close as I can get to the course of the Bourne stream. It's in pipework underneath the gardens of the houses on the left of us. But there is somewhere that I'm aiming to get. If indeed where I'm looking for is still there. Here we are. Bear in mind, I haven't been through this twit, which is what we call the little pathways in Sussex, for probably the best part of 45 years. So, and I'm already noticing that several trees have gone. But over on the right of us would have been the mill pond for the Ocklinge mill. And unfortunately they have, much to my disappointment, built a new fence. Because we are standing right over the Bourne stream right now, and this is going to be a bit awkward, but I'm on the other side. And I'm trying, I don't know how successful this is going to be, but I'm hoping that down there you can see the water, because that is there. Yeah. That's all that's left down there of the old Bourne stream. No, I can't see. Ooh. No. Well, that's a disappointment. But we tried. That is physically, apart from Moxham Gardens, probably the only part of the original Bourne stream that the public can see these days. Unless you would agree. There wasn't much of that either. Anyway, onwards and upwards. All up here, of course, as I said earlier, is the town of Eastbourne. Until the railways came in the 1840s, and of course, once you put a railway station somewhere in those days, building work pretty soon followed, and the whole town shifted down east and began to grow in some size. And so this became the old town. And as I say, unless you come up here on a coach trip or an arranged walking tour, not a place where actually many of the tourists that town choose to visit for whatever reason. I'm amazed the amount of people there were. Baker's Road and Star Road, and quite a few houses and buildings got swallowed up with the supermarket, and where the about the midpoint of the supermarket was where the old cinema was. But anyway, this is Moat Road, and getting down to its lowest point now. Oh, excuse me. It's interesting. The Bourne is in pipework under here, and I'm wondering if these manhole covers are actually over the pipe. Right, we'll take a look at this building here, which has been known as the courthouse restaurant, and is now the counting house pub and restaurant. And it's a grand old building, probably a couple of 100 years old, not really much older than that. It's on the site of a building that dates back to the time of the original town of Eastbourne. Don't know if you can hear that. That is the sound of the Bourne stream running through the pipework. Yes, the sound. The original building was on that site, probably dates back to the 12th century, and was the old courthouse, and if you like, the original Eastbourne Town Hall. And that's the back of the supermarket, eerily empty. We've just passed what would have been Baker's Road, and we now come to where Star Road would have been here. We're looking towards the Star Brewery and the old Star Shades Inn, but this is where me and my mate and others from our college lodgings would come on a Friday evening, the Star, and we would play darts to win the beer against the college kitchen staff. They never seemed to win much. And this is the old remnants of Star Road. This is also where Tommy Cooper used to come. It was his local. He had a stall in the corner of the saloon bar, and despite his reputation for tightness, he bought me and my mate Jeff a drink on Friday night. But probably only because my mate was 6'7" and 3/4 inches tall, and he made a great thing of the 3/4, but he was taller than Tommy Cooper. And when we went into the bar for a quiet drink that night, Tommy looked him up and down. We said, "Evening, Mr. Cooper." He looked him up and down, and he stood up and he said, "Editor, get these lads a drink," because he was 3 sheets to the wind by then. And so yes, Tommy Cooper did put his hand in his pocket occasionally, and no, we didn't get the famous tea bag with the string on the end of it. Still some old shops through here. This would have been quite a thriving little hive of industry at one time. There's, I know it's a general shop now, but has a famous old name, Leonard Stevens. You get a clue as to the rural activities of the area at the time. Master Saddlers. Another one of the older buildings that has survived over there. And the Crown Pub, where my folk singing career began. Back in about 1973, something like that. That's the Merry England Folk Club, under the leadership of a gentleman called Clive Bennett. Tea room's over there in the corner. So this is one of those little hidden parts of Eastbourne, but it's got a lot of history. Oh look, somebody's left some books there for people to have a look at. Nice little touch. Ancient and modern side by side look. Old building, satellite dish. I wonder why they took the plaque, the blue plaque, off of Tommy Cooper's old house. Ah, no. What they've done, they've obviously made the two houses into one, because there, you see, there is a tribute to the man. Probably one of the best comedians we've ever had, and I'll finish my walk there because good memories, but rather sad.